Hello, my name is Kevin Bloom. I'm an amateur activist, and I have in the past been a lobbyist as well as an advocate. The difference between a lobbyist and an advocate is lobbyists get paid, advocates don't. So that would mean that you and I are advocates. Today I'm going to tell you about a fun process that you might want to get involved in, and it's called How to Stop a Bad Bill. In the future, I hope to do a series on how to pass good bills. But for now, let's have something that everybody should really know how to do along with changing a flat tire, and that is how to stop a bad bill. To start, it all begins with you. There's no one else. If you've ever wondered somebody should do something about this bill, they're not going to. Only you can do it. And once you've decided to do it, you're the only one that needs to be right there at the beginning, changing things. All right, now, here's the bill that we want to use for our example. It happened recently in New Hampshire. It's called House Bill 628, the Family Leave Bill. Now, people that wrote this bill added a Republican to the bill. It was mostly a Democrat-based bill. They added one Republican, I believe, and it made it a bipartisan bill. Somewhat, they did enlist the support of various business spokespeople who liked the idea, and they had pretty much put their whole program together, and it wasn't really noticed until it had already been in committee sitting there for a year. And then it came out, and the first we heard of it was after it had passed its first committee. And just to be, I'll fill you in on this as we go along. I may be somewhat less than clear if you're not familiar with the process. We're going to get to the whole process. But when a bill goes through committee, in New Hampshire, it comes out with a committee recommendation of ought to pass or inexpedient to legislate. And this bill came out of committee and hit the floor and was voted on and passed. And then we found out it was going to 3 committees in the House. The next one was the Commerce Committee, and that was the first one we knew about. Now, we found out about this bill coming in. I found out about it because Elliot Axelman, who is a writer and publishes the Liberty Block, he's also an EMT, wrote an article about it and said New Hampshire's getting an income tax. Well, I was on Facebook at the time, saw his message, and got a hold of him right away. I'd never met him before. So this is something that I really don't like. Income tax is bad. So we sort of proceeded from there, and he was like, nobody's paying any attention, nobody's noticing this, it's not on the HRA radar, it's not on the NHLA radar. So the House Republican Alliance hadn't mentioned it at the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance that reviews bills, and you can see their bills that they review at nhliberty.org. By the way, you have to be aware that something's coming. So you really need a process where you can look at it. If there's not an organization that you deal with, I can suggest a few of them that you might look into depending on what side of the aisle you're on. The Institute for Justice sometimes tracks them, the 10th Amendment Center, the ACLU, the NHLA, Americans for Prosperity. There are groups on either side of any issue that you may find that are keeping track of legislation. I think the separate interest groups, like the gun groups, are generally going to track gun legislation. You don't have to worry too much about something slipping through on this kind of scale with the gun groups. That's not going to happen. They're pretty, and there's people who are very conscious about various social issues that you'll hear about it. But this one was really a stealth bill. So, since it's you, I took this job on, gratis, just for fun. And so the first thing you want to do is organize a team. And I did that on Facebook. So what I did was I started a Facebook group called Stop HB 628. And of course, as soon as I did that, people said, you should call it Stop the Income Tax Bill. Well, I'm sorry, but we called it like it was, HB 628, so people would know what number to refer to when they're contacting their representative. Through social media, we found our allies. Some of the allies you want to look for immediately. You want to find people who can do things, people who are interested in getting out there, people who can organize volunteers, people who are going to organize phone calls, and people who are going to organize letter writing. And all these things are volunteer groups, but the other things you want to find are writers, activists, other groups that will help you. One of the first people I contacted was Jane over at the Coalition for New Hampshire Taxpayers. Got them on board and talked to Granite Croc, Steve McDonald, and then also the NHLA, Jeffrey Cream. And then one of the things that I really wanted to do was to get AFP on board, because they are really active as far as getting volunteers. So I got a hold of Sarah Scott and asked her to get a hold of Greg Moore, and then I asked Aaron Day to get a hold of Greg Moore as well, which he did. And AFP had notified us. And remember, we found out on Sunday. The hearing is on Tuesday for the second committee. So we literally have a day to get a hold of everybody and to get our strategy into place. And boy, was that really interesting, how to move fast. We added about 149 volunteers to our group in a day. And it got bigger, but it went down. But we did it very quickly. And we had organized letters to the editor. We got the representatives who had opposed it already, and added them to the list, and just got everybody together as working in the same direction as soon as possible. Now, the people that went to testify for the hearing that were able to go, you'll find with your friends, maybe you too, it's tough for you to get out during the daytime to get down to the State House. And that's understandable, but you really have to do it or find somebody who will do it for you, because it's not going to do itself. Anyway, also people can hold signs outside of the committee room. I don't think that's terribly effective, but as a measure of public support, the other side is always going to have people standing there with signs, so you kind of have to do it. Signs are stop HB 628, no income tax, that sort of thing. The good thing that happened is that we were totally outnumbered always. There are always far more people that had been organized in advance or being paid to hold signs, or maybe not, I don't know. I didn't talk to them. But the people on the other side talked to our people, and we found out through the people that were holding signs for us that they didn't realize it was an income tax, and they weren't very familiar with the bill, and some of them just quit being on the other side. So that's always a win if you can convert members to the other side. We have our allies and our team together. Knowing the process is how to do it next. Now, we knew that the Commerce Committee was next, and we didn't know how everyone was going to vote. Normally, when you're in committee, some of the people have already made up their minds one way, some of them have made it up the other, and some of them haven't. So you don't really know who's who until you call them. So they absolutely positively have to be called. You have to contact every member of the committee. And in New Hampshire, their names and phone numbers are all listed. Emailing is not the same. Good job. Do email them. Absolutely. No reason not to, but talk to them. That's very important. Also, when contacting reps, a lot of times reps have told me, I got all these phone calls and all these emails, but nobody from my district got a hold of me. So if you can do that, you can find somebody in their district to call them. That's even better. Fortunately, we had the mysterious M on our team who knew people in most people's districts that could call them. The process further. Now, once a bill has been through the committee hearing, there's a public hearing and you get to talk. Wow, scary. That happened. And we had two people who had never talked before got up and spoke. And so I'm going to just cover briefly a few things about speaking to a committee. One of them is you got 3 minutes tops, and they're not going to be paying attention to you after 2. So get it over with, make it fast. Don't read it off a card. If you can bring a little index card with your main points, you can look at it and then talk to them. And there's a few things that we always do at committee hearings. One thing we do is we wear a jacket. That's because they have to. The reps are actually forced under penalty of death or law or something, or a ticket, that they have to wear jackets and can't take them off. So you need to share their pain and wear a jacket, unless you're a woman, or yeah, that's pretty much it. Then you don't have to wear a jacket. Now, through the committee process, we're going to go into the committee. There's going to be public testimony, then they're going to stop with a public testimony, and they're going to go to probably a subcommittee, and they'll assign, the chair of the committee will assign a subcommittee, and they'll do this in more depth. You can go to the subcommittee hearing too. It's not a public hearing, but if they want more information and you're an expert or you happen to know them, they'll sometimes ask you for your opinion. But you're not in there to join the discussion unless you're asked. Different committees handle it differently, but that's generally how it goes. Once the subcommittee hearings are at an end, the committee it'll go back to the main committee, they'll take a vote, and they'll vote inexpedient to legislate or ought to pass. Okay, so the Commerce Committee was contacted, and they voted against the bill. They voted inexpedient to legislate 11-9. So, our first victory. Now, we've got the full House has voted for it. But now it's gone back to the Commerce Committee. Commerce Committee says inexpedient to legislate. Now it goes to the House floor. So we're going to contact everybody, all the reps now. There's 400 of them in New Hampshire, so that's not easy. But now, this is where the volunteers jumped in. And the main thing we had to do was to let people know what was going on. Nobody had heard about this. The sponsors of the bill said, well, the people that we've asked, more than 80% are in favor of this. And when the union leader took a poll, they said, how'd you like an income tax where a small number of people will benefit from everyone putting tax money in? Yeah, it was over 90% no. So once people know about this stuff, once the articles started coming out in the paper, we had organized a bunch of writers who were all volunteers, of course, that wrote letters to everyone. And they started being published, they started hitting, and now they're starting to get some steamrolling here going on. People start knowing about it. We're doing letters to the editor, we're doing phone calls to the committee members. We're not calling members of the public, we're calling the members of the committee. Now it's going to finance next, but before it does that, it's going to a House floor vote again. So, whoops. We had the hearings, then we had the floor votes. Now the second floor vote comes up. We lose. So, bang, down the tubes. Now it goes to Finance Committee again. However, fewer people voted for it in the second time than did the first time, so we're making progress. Sign holding, we've covered a little bit, and I just wanted to mention you need that sign holding. The more people, the better. And it makes for good pictures because the press is going to be there and they're going to take pictures of people holding signs. Who might want to hold a sign for you? Well, people who are running for the Senate was my personal idea, and that was my contribution to the sign holding. Very important point. Feed the volunteers. Okay, pizza is mandatory for feeding your volunteers and other things as well. I wanted to mention that the Finance Committee voted ought to pass. We lose. Goes to the House floor. The House votes again. We lose. Now, so we had 1 win and 5 losses at this point. Now, we kind of had guessed, since the way the votes were going, we're looking at who's voting which way and who might possibly change their vote, and they're going our way. The last vote, fewer people voted for the bill in the last one than had for the previous one. We'll try to get, another thing I want to mention is get your people there. We had a lot of, at one point there was a vote to table the bill, to just take it off the whole schedule, and it failed by like 6 votes. So it's that close, and if you can talk people into being there, get your people there, make sure your people are there, and voting. And I know in our legislature, it's they get $100 a year. It's not a full, and it is almost a full-time job. So people have their own jobs. They've got other things to do, which is why it's hard to get sign holders and people to testify. But the reps, too, don't make it every time. Fortunately, some of them do, but some you want to try to get them to make an exception or make this a very important part of their day. So we know at this point it's going to go to the Senate. And we have a lot going in our favor. Our volunteers have spoken to the governor already, and one of them asked him point blank, they said, are you going to sign this bill? And he said, well, I'm not going to sign it the way it is. And so we thought, well, that's good. And then are they going to try to change it? And of course, that came up later that, well, we'll fix it. Fortunately, Senator Morse had, in the Finance Committee, did a couple of things happened. First, the governor wrote a letter to the Finance Committee, and he said, and I'll put a link to this, and so I can share it with you on when this is public. But It was also released to the press. You can probably see it in a PDF format. But he said, I'm not going to sign the bill this way. Here's what I don't like about it. We don't need an income tax. It has to be something that's fiscally responsible. And indeed, I'm not really arguing about the merits of the bill in this video, but suffice to say that it was not a good bill because, well, income tax. So there. So we have the governor writes a letter to the Senate Finance Committee, which says, okay, then we're going to vote inexpedient to legislate. So the Senate Finance Committee says that. Then it goes to the full Senate, and the Senate votes, and they vote to send it to a study committee. So this is in the second year of the process. The study committee means it's dead because they can decide whatever they want to, but the next group were voted in, the next group of reps, the next session of and elections are over in 2018. We're going to find that either they can bring it back, but they can't re-vote on it again. So it's all done, which is how we say dead until next year. It's over, the end. But it's probably going to come back because bad ideas never die. And so that's why you have to be vigilant and watch for these things to show up. And I'd like to thank you very much for watching. Have a great day.